event that the patient is deceased at 12 o'clock, is there anything that can be done that would involve additional help coming 5 minutes later to save a patient?
I believe it's unlikely.
In the event that you had prepared a chart of medications given during the evening, would that alter the outcome in this case?
Not if the patient was dead when you came upon him at around 12 noon.
Now, hypothetically, if you had given that patient propofol, slow bolus dose over 3 to 5 minutes between 10:40 and 10:50, would you expect that to have anything to do with that patient's condition at 12 o'clock?
No, I would not.
Especially in light of the fact that you've observed that patient for 20 to 30 minutes after giving the propofol injection. Would you have any reason to think that propofol had anything to do with the situation that you were now confronted with?
Sustain.
In the event that you'd given a slow bolus of propofol at 10:40 to between 10:40 and 10:50, and stayed with the patient for a period of time such that you felt that the patient was resting comfortably, sleeping lightly, not sleeping heavy, not snoring, would you think that that patient had incurred troubles as a result of propofol?
Given that it was more than an hour had elapsed since the small, slow bolus injection was given, I would not have expected any effects at that time related to propofol.
If you give that slow bolus of propofol, in the event that propofol had an adverse effect on the patient, would you see that during the period of time that you were given that bolus over 3 to 5 minutes?
You would certainly expect to find it within 5 minutes. And typically, if you're giving it that slowly, you would observe actually even while you're infusing.
And after a 10 or 15 minute period of time, would you expect the therapeutic effect of propofol to be totally eliminated?
Yes, I believe I've testified to that earlier.
In the event that you've passed that time.
Whoops.
Excuse me, sir.
If you could restart.
In the event that you had passed that time in which the therapeutic, you're sure that the therapeutic effect was gone, would you have any reason to believe that propofol was a factor in this case?
No, I would not.
Now, let's assume that you followed or went with the paramedics to. I want you to further assume that the paramedics have sought permission and have received permission to terminate resuscitation, basically to declare the patient dead. Do you think that by taking over treatment of that patient and convincing them to go on to the hospital, is it realistic that there's anything else that can be done for this patient?
Objection. Improper hypothetical.
Overruled. Do you understand it?
I believe you're asking me at the point.
Well, if you need to ask a question, then I'll sustain the objection. Re-ask it.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Sure.
Doctor, the paramedics have obtained authority via telephone after reporting their findings, their observations of no pulse, no breathing, no change in condition after 20 minutes, 25 minutes of treatment, and they've received permission to terminate the call that the patient is deceased, do you think at that point in time, making further attempts by transporting the person to the hospital and doing further procedures to the hospital, there's a realistic chance of saving that patient?
I would say there was no chance.
Do you think that in the event that either the paramedics or the emergency room personnel, either or, at the hospital, were aware of the fact that earlier in the day, like at 10:40, 10:50, that the patient had received propofol, that would change their treatment procedures?
No.
Do you think it would have changed the outcome in this case?
Absolutely not.
Is there, would it be accurate to state that the only treatment for propofol, if there's propofol there, is time?
Well, propofol does not have a specific antagonist, that is reversal drug, in contrast to the benzodiazepines like lorazepam or midazolam or diazepam, which can be reversed by flumazenil. So the only treatment for a propofol overdose is just tincture of time, if you will. That is, you just wait for the drug to be redistributed and eliminated.
And if there is a propofol overdose, that is apparent right from the very beginning, isn't it?
Yeah, it usually occurs as you're administering or shortly thereafter, and is related to peak concentrations.
And propofol goes from peak concentration to a very small concentration in a matter of how long?
Well, it's a very lipophilic drug, so it's rapidly initially distributed when given in the intravascular space intravenously, according to the perfusion of the various organs. So it goes to initially, the majority of the drug goes to the organs that are most highly perfused, like the brain, like the heart, like the kidney and the liver. And then over a very short time, it's rapidly, we say, redistributed from the highly perfused organs, that is those that get the majority of the blood flow, to the less well perfused tissue, such as muscle, and then more slowly into fat. And then finally it's eliminated over a long period of time from the reservoirs in the fat, where being a lipid-soluble drug, it gets into the fatty tissue. So if you're talking about a bolus dose, yes, the level falls very quickly because of distribution and redistribution. If you're talking about an infusion, then the elimination phase plays a bigger role.
So if you're when you're talking about bolus dose, would you consider 25 milligrams over 3 to 5 minutes? Would you call that a bolus, or would you call that an infusion?
I would call that a very slow bolus.
And in doing a slow bolus, the effects of that bolus become readily apparent to the person giving that a bolus very quickly?
More or less by the end of the infusion.
And in the event that the person is okay after the administration of that bolus, there's no reason to believe that propofol would cause any further effects?
No, there isn't.
Okay, you were shown an IV line. I think it's Defense WW on it. Did I take that out of the bag?
Yes, it should be marked on the outside of the bag.
Can I approach the witness?
Is it WW?
Yes, it is.
All right, thank you. Sure.
Show you this IV line that was shown earlier. Is that different than what it normally would be?
Yeah, the tab that covers the venting port has been torn off or cut off.
You have another IV line,
Yeah.
the same variety?
Exactly. And you can easily see that the tab here is, and it's fairly well attached, so it would have taken a rather vigorous effort to tear it off, or more likely.
So that tab can be bent around?
It looks like it's cut, actually.
So, should I put that on the overhead to show the difference in the one that's...
Do you have a completely new exhibit?
This is totally new exhibit. I guess that's...
It's the same tubing, Your Honor.
No, I understand. I'm asking counsel. So you've made reference to WW. Do you want another exhibit for
Yes.
demonstrative purposes? Quadruple whiskey.
Okay, that's quadruple W.
Yes.
And I'm going to mark that on the outside of the...
I thought we were up to Victor.
Oh, wait.
No?
No, we've been talking about VVV.
We had quadruple Victor for quite a while, I think. I'm no good at anything other than phonetic alphabet. I left off at quadruple Victor. Is there a quadruple whiskey? He asked the jurors. They agree with me for a change. But nobody else around here does. So let's just check for a moment. Did we have four W's?
Check the exhibit box.
Well, let's check.
It should be the very last page in the exhibit box for the exhibit.
Mrs. Theodoro shows it. I'm going to defer to the jurors, I think.
Can we take a vote?
No, let's just take a moment. Do we have a quadruple W? All right, right now, rather than wait any longer, we're going to call it quadruple W, and if we have to change it, we will, with my apologies, ladies and gentlemen. So this is 4W.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome.
Quadruple W. I'm going to show this is, would you call this the spike portion?
Yes, I would. The part that goes into the IV bag or into the cork on the ampule of propofol.
And that's a little plastic cap that goes over that. What's the device called that it appears?
It's called
as
a
though
venting port, I think.
It's a venting port?
Yes.
And to unvent it, you just attach it like this.
Yeah.
And on this other,
And for the record, it's quadruple W.
the other one is double W. We've got that venting port, but it doesn't appear to have a cap on it. Appears to be either cut or, Doctor?
It appears that way to me. I've never seen it before, and I never attempted to actually tear it myself, so I don't know what's required to tear it, but it looks like it could have been cut with scissors, I guess.
I believe you were asked whether or not you broke it or altered it to confuse Dr. Schaefer?
I've never seen it before, and furthermore, I would never attempt to do anything devious like that.
And turnoff's replacing WW?
Yes and no.
Turnoff's replacing quadruple W. Go figure the odds of that, ladies and gentlemen.
Would that tab make a difference in how you would operate that IV line?
Not really. The venting just allows liquid to come out of a fixed ampule, like a glass ampule, or out of a bag. Having it open allows the drip to go much faster. You still have the control because you have the little screw knob at the bottom, and you also have a clamp if you want to just completely stop it. So I don't understand why anyone would remove it. It just doesn't make sense.
Does the removal of that tab have anything to do with how the IV line would work?
No.
And would it function with that tab out?
Yes.
And that's do you know how it could have got the tab removed?
Indicated he's never seen it before.
Sustained coffee speculation.
Now, let's assume that Dr. Murray did use this to administer propofol, or something similar to this to administer propofol on June 25th.
Quadruple W?
Double W. Two W's.
Okay. I just want to make sure we try.
Or a line. They're both the same. They're basically identical. And would it be easy to conceal?
You're asking me if he had used that to drip in the propofol from the bottle?
Yes.
Well, as you're showing in your hand, I guess perhaps the DA has a stronger hand and he can crunch it up better, but it would have propofol in it, presumably if it's dripping propofol. So if you did pull it out of the bottle and stuff it in your pocket, you'd probably have a pretty messy pocket.
It would be wet?
Yeah, the liquid would be all the way from the drip chamber to the end of the tubing.
But it would be easier to conceal than the IV bag that was used to drip the propofol, wouldn't it?
It would be kind of hard to roll that bag up. Again, if you rolled it up that way, you would have liquid going in a lot of places.
And if you wanted to conceal this, you'd probably also want to conceal the bottle, wouldn't you?
Objection, calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Now, you were asked about. I'm going to put this back in WW.
Thank you.
You were asked about reports and transcripts that you've read regarding your suspicion that there could be oral propofol used in this case. The testimony that you read, was it previously from the prosecution's experts that testified at the preliminary hearing, Dr. Ruffalo and Dr. Rogers, who's testified in this case?
Objection improper. Witnesses were answering questions of Mr. Flanagan.
Overruled. Mr. Flanagan's inquiring as the basis for Dr. White's opinions.
Yes, that did have an impact on my decision to include that in my preliminary letter to you.
And in that line of questioning asked of those witnesses, you recall the questions asked about how the blood was 8 parts propofol to 1 part of lidocaine, and how the stomach contents were 1 part of propofol to 12 parts of lidocaine. You recall that hypothetical being given to those experts?
I don't recall the actual detail, but I do recall some differences in ratios that raise the issue of perhaps that's a possibility.
And did both of those experts indicate that that did give rise to the possibility of oral propofol being taken?
Objection misstates the testimony. Relevance.
Overruled.
I did think Again, you're asking me to recall something from February, that they testified that possibly indicated the possibility. That's all I remember, was just the possibility of propofol oral ingestion.
Now, after you'd received those transcripts from me, along with some other reports, I believe the autopsy report, toxicology reports, and what's it, about 13, 14 expert reports that had been previously retained by the prosecution. You recall that?
I recall receiving a lot of reports by experts on behalf of the prosecution, yes.
And I'd asked you if you'd be willing to evaluate this evidence and this information to render an opinion in this case.
Yes, you did, and I told you that I was very busy with other projects, so I had a limited time, and I would do my best to provide you with a quick opinion.
Now, in between me providing you this information and you writing an opinion, did you have a conversation where Mr. Walgren asked to consult with you?
Again, from my memory, and I haven't checked my emails, I think Mr. Walgren sent me an email, as I recall initially, and I forget the nature of the exact email, but I think it was something to the effect, would you be willing to discuss this case? I don't want to, I haven't read the email in since February, I guess, and I did give my phone number and said I'd be happy to chat over the phone.
Did he then call you at your home?
He did call me at my home, yes.
Did you tell him at that point in time that you had already been consulted by the defense and that you were investigating this case on our behalf?
I think what I said was that I had been contacted by you on behalf of the defense and that I hadn't made a commitment to be an expert for the defense because I was still in the process of gathering information, and that I'd be happy to chat with him at a later time, something to that effect. It was a short conversation, short, pleasant, and that was sort of the end of my contact with Mr. Walgren.
Well, didn't Mr. Walgren ask you why you were investigating this on behalf of the defense?
He didn't really ask. He made curious inquiry as to whether I expected to be paid and asked me did I think the defense could afford to pay me, something to that effect. Do they have the money to pay for an expert? And I made the comment, because I've said earlier that I have received approximately $11,000, that I do need to be compensated for my time because I don't work for a university. I don't have the backup of having funds provided by the university, a university or another organization to cover my salary. So it's my only source of income.
Now, we've talked about how propofol can be used to anesthetize an individual so that they have a deep sedation. You can actually do open heart surgery on them. Is that correct?
Well, I think you mean anesthetize or anesthetize, but deep sedation is not the same as anesthesia.
What's the difference?
Well, when a patient is anesthetized, you're providing not only unconsciousness or hypnosis, but you're also providing analgesia or relief of pain and typically muscle relaxation. So it's sort of a triad. Whereas when you're providing deep sedation, again, the sedation is one component of general anesthesia, but not the entire spectrum unless you give a massive amount, and then you can block pain, response to painful stimuli.
Okay, you've used the term MAC care, MAC.
Monitored anesthesia care, yes.
Okay, and can that be used for major surgery, like, say, hip replacement or intra-abdominal surgery?
No, not typically. I'm not, I mean, you may be able to do some procedures minimally invasively that are intracavitary, but certainly not major open procedures as you're suggesting.
Well, in the,
You let me know for purposes of the adjournment, please.
this be fine, Your Honor.
All right, may I see counsel? Take the evening adjournment at this time. Dr. White, with my thanks, please remember all the admonishments. Don't discuss your testimony or the facts of the case with any other witness until we finish the trial. You may step down and leave. I'm going to ask you to come back tomorrow morning at 9:30 a.m. Thank you, sir. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please bear with me, as always, as I deliver to you the all-important admonishments at the adjournment today. Do not discuss this case among yourselves or with anyone else, or form or express any opinions about the case until it's submitted finally to you. Don't visit any scene or location that may have been referenced, mentioned, or involved in the case. Don't perform the experiments or on your own or through another person conduct any independent research or investigation on any topics, subjects, or persons mentioned or involved in this case. This means not listening to, reading, or watching any television or radio programs, newspaper or magazine articles, books, or the internet regarding any of these topics, subjects, or persons. On your own or through another person, do not access any internet website, including but not limited to any search engine sites such as Google, Ask, or Bing, or social network site, including but not limited to Facebook or MySpace, or text or tweet anything, or access any blogs or post any messages on any of those sites. Do not have any contact or communication whatsoever with the defendant, the attorneys, the witnesses, or spectators. If anyone approaches you or even tries to approach you with regard to this case in an effort to discuss the matter or to provide you with contact information so that at a later point in time you can contact any person or organization regarding this case, immediately cease any such encounter and immediately notify the court staff and security. Do all of you continue to assure us that you will follow the written admonishments presented to you as well as my continuing verbal admonishments? Yes, all indicating the affirmative. Now, I am advised by a little birdie that one of your members is celebrating a birthday today. It's actually not a little birdie. It's more like a flock of seagulls who have advised me. So without embarrassing that particular person, have a happy and healthy birthday. We're going to see all of you at 9:30 tomorrow. The sheriff will be advised so you can get a little extra time in the morning. So we'll see you at 9:30 a.m. tomorrow. Good evening. Thank you.